Hello, and thank you for joining us today for our webinar with agents. SMBs take on communication during the COVID crisis. My name is Lizzie, and I am a Senior Account Manager for Locology, and I will be your host for today's event. A few housekeeping items before we begin. This webinar is being recorded and will be circulated to all attendees with a presentation within 24 hours of the broadcast. Questions will be answered during the Q&A session at the end if time permits. You can, however, ask questions at any time during the broadcast by using the question window in your control panel. Our speakers today include Carrie Baldwin, Corporate Advisor, Sales and Marketing for Agents. We are also joined by Charles Laughlin, Senior Analyst at Locology, as well as Matt Hunt, Co-founder and CEO of Hard Exercise Works, and Hema Patel, General and Cosmetic Dentist at Diablo View Family Dentist. Without further ado, I'll pass it over to Carrie to get things started.
Thank you, Lucy, and hello all. This is Carrie Baldwin, and I am with Agents. And before I do a quick intro on Hema and Matt and talk a little bit about what we're going to go through today, for those that may not be familiar with Agents, I'll take 30 seconds just to tell you a little bit about us. Agents is an AI-driven chatbot and born out of our founder's personal experience operating a small business and learning how difficult it is to respond to every customer all the time, fast enough, 24/7. So he knew he was losing business, and he recognized that consumers have increasing demands on and expectations on how they prefer to communicate with businesses. So picking up the phone or sending an email still happens, but of course now consumers are very much interested in other channels such as chat and text. So that's getting a little bit more ubiquitous. So we believe that offering various channels of communication, so being omni-channel to the extent that we can be, satisfies consumer demand, and that using automation to meet those demands is really the easiest way for a small business owner to remain competitive, be able to respond to all of their customer inquiries, grow and retain their business. And because of our belief in very strong communication with customers, we really wanted to hold this webinar today because we believe it's a very interesting topic right now, certainly. We're going to learn from a couple of our panelists today, Hema and Matt, how they treated their businesses during the recent 2 to 3 months of business shutdowns. Matt is the co-founder and CEO of Hard Exercise Works. It is a fitness chain, mostly in Southeast states. And so as the franchisor, of course, he had to not only deal with his own business, but also that of several, multiple business owners. And so take the stress, up several notches there. And Hema, of course, she's in California and with a dental practice. And so California continues to experience some of the shutdowns that are opening up in other parts of the country. And so I think it'll be a really interesting discussion on how Matt had to deal with his own location as well as that of a franchise network, and Hema dealing with an unessential business in a state that is still experiencing lockdown. So what is it going to look like? How did they move into this process? What did they do to prepare their businesses? What did they learn in the process? And what are they going to take away coming out of it? So that's what we're going to go through today. And so I'll pass it off to Charles, who is kindly going to go ahead and moderate our panel. Thank you, Charles.
Carrie, thank you very much. Thanks everyone for joining us today. Hema and Matt, thank you for joining us and sharing your stories today. We really appreciate it. We're excited to hear about it. So just a quick setup on how this is going to unfold from here. This is not going to be a death by PowerPoint webinar. We're really going to have a conversation guided topically. So I'm going to walk through a series of sort of high-level topics, ask each of our panelists to describe their experience in their business around that specific topic. So what we're going to start with is the obvious, sort of the immediate crisis response. What happened in the early days, weeks of the crisis, and how how it unfolded, how they responded in their business. So Hema, why don't we start with you and kind of just talk about the immediate, sort of when you realized you're going to be shut down, and then sort of what your immediate plan was, both to wind the business down and communicate with your customers. Kind of walk us through the initial phase, and then we'll ask Matt to do the same.
Sure. Hi. I still remember March 16th was the day we all went in to work with the full schedule of patients, and the news started rolling in on that day. And by the time we reached about half a day, our county announced the lockdown, and we had to cancel the rest of the patients for the day and also for next 2 weeks. And this is the time. It's something that we were not prepared for, to cancel all the appointments that were on schedule. Some people had treatment that was ongoing, but we thought that, okay, it's 2 weeks and we'll just plan it out, and we'll just cancel, went home, and that's just how it happened. And we thought it would be 2 weeks and we'll go back and we'll catch up, and we're gonna kind of be able to bring all the patients back and finish the treatment.
So when did you realize that it was more than 2 weeks and you had to sort of undergo a more elaborate process?
Yeah, so when the lockdown orders came, we felt like, initially we felt like we were prepared and it was 2 weeks, but week later they announced another lockdown, and this time it was indefinite time. And it started getting harder at that time, because more cases, more news kept coming in, and more cases started reporting, and we felt like we are in it for a long time, not another week or 2 weeks. It's going to be a long time. We just didn't know how it was going to end. And we started preparing for extensive period of lockdown, and we had to sit down and look at our appointment book for next, not 2 weeks, but 2 months actually, and identify people with immediate needs, whose oral health would suffer, or people with unfinished treatment, people in pain and active infections, and so on. And we had to contact those people and see how they were doing, and see if they needed immediate care or they could wait another week. And we just didn't have any guidelines for protective equipments at that time. This was early on stage, so we didn't know what filters would work for the mask if we were to see these patients, and how we are going to protect ourselves if we were to see these people, and how we're going to protect them and our team, our staff. So that was the hard hit. That's when we realized that this was going to be a long, tough road.
Yeah. So Matt, you run a chain of gyms, right? And again, not a non-essential business. I'm sure it hurts a little being called a non-essential business for both of you, but we all know what that means at this point.
Right.
And so yeah, just kind of walk through the same initial sort of reaction and process, and
Yeah,
how
so
that.
sure. Our date was March 16th as well. We had a few more days to prepare. We had heard through an official that we know up at the state of Florida. So we're in Jupiter, Florida, for all people listening. And we have locations in 4 states: California, North Carolina, Florida, where the bulk of our locations are, in Georgia. And so we had heard that we might be shutting down. So immediately we did 4 things. We switched to, we put a plan of action together to switch to virtual immediately. The second part of the plan was, or the priority was, in any form of communication, whatever you do not play victim. We had started to see competitors putting up things like, hey, we're a small business, I want you to stay on, help me, we're gonna keep your fees the same. We just didn't want to go that route. We thought that was a little unprofessional. The third part was we wanted to preserve each franchise owner's cash, and we put a plan together. And then the fourth one was we had to immediately change our website to reflect that we were going virtual with a COVID notice. And if you don't mind, under each one of those categories, I just have a few bullet points that I'd like to address, if it's fine. So
Sure.
When we switch to virtual, we use Instagram and Facebook. The guys are really good on social media at all 17 locations. So rather than a corporate message being sent out, we asked them and we gave them guidelines on how to film their own message and put it out immediately, which they did, and they did a good job covering all the topics. Under the preserving cash, we had a plan in place to, the first thing we did as a franchisor is we told them, hey, look, we're going to reduce your royalty fees by 50%. We aren't sure if we're ever going to collect the back end of that, but for right now, let's just keep it at 50% for however long this goes on. We knew it was going to be at least 2 months. We instituted a daily Zoom meeting at 2 p.m. every day for a half hour just to keep on top of all this. We pulled all the ways that they could get the EIDL money, the PPP money, and for the state of Florida, there was a disaster line of credit. So we gathered all that information over the period of 3 days and started disseminating it to them, telling them, here's what you need to do to take advantage of this and do it now because everybody's going to be entering these floodgates. And then we essentially, on the website, we created a cash flow analysis so that they could look at it and kind of determine, are they going to survive this storm? We have a few lagging centers. The majority of them do very well, but 2 of them were not doing well. We wanted to make sure that they would survive. And then we created a video for them just to say, hey, here's what we're going to do to run your classes. Here's the format we want you to do on the virtual program. Here are the class times we want you to do it at least 5 per day rather than our 10 in-house classes per day. And we just kept over communicating to them over and over, on top of staying on top of them about loaning out their equipment. We wanted them to create community. Each location has about $40,000 worth of CrossFit style equipment. So we said, hey, loan out 3 pieces to each customer until it's gone, keep them active, keep them engaged in your business.
Wow, that's very comprehensive. And so I guess my immediate reaction is, how did customers, and I'm going to ask you both this, how did customers respond? Did they, support the business to the degree you expected? Beyond that, what were the biggest challenges in sort of managing that initial customer communication on an individual customer basis? Emma, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I'll go. The customers were actually really supportive to small businesses. For us, we used multiple channels to communicate and to update them. First thing was, as Matt mentioned, we also updated the website. But more than that, we also used the agent's digital receptionist tool, and we updated that with consistent messaging on what we're doing and what we're doing to prepare in this time, and when we're going to be able to see them and so forth. Patients were actually really, really responsive and supportive. They understood, and if any, it was surprising, we got all kind of messages from our customers, in text messages and emails and everything. It could be, starting from emergency help to the status of their appointment, asking for updates, and also messages to wish us good luck. So they were super supportive on whatever we were going through. But communication tools that we used were very helpful.
So Matt, how about you? How did the customers respond? I mean, obviously working out virtually is a different experience, but how did that go?
Yeah, similar to what Hema described, we were using a competitive AI chatbot at the time, and in the midst of this, we're switching over to agents. But the AI bot worked in either case. It worked extremely well. We did a lot of texting. We did a ton of email communication, and of course Facebook Live. So we would get on Facebook, have a directive to each one of the owners to mimic, and say, here's what you should be communicating on a daily basis, and here's the 5 points of contact you should do each day. So we used Facebook and Instagram primarily to stay in touch with the customers as well.
Right. So the other thing I wanted to kind of get to is, in an initial phase like this, and I don't know if you went through any of the issues that a lot of companies are going through with, staff and just the hard decisions that we all know have to be made in these moments. What were some of the toughest decisions each of you had to make to bring the business into a situation where it's going to be sustainable through the crisis? Matt, why don't you start?
Again, we made sure that they understood how to preserve their cash. So we had them reach out to their landlords. Number one, we sent them a template letter that we created for landlords, and to their banks and to their attorneys, and said, hey, look, you guys are partners in this with us. We're taking a hit. We reduced all the membership fees by 50% to keep everybody on a virtual platform. And obviously those that didn't want to remain or wanted to freeze, we allowed them to freeze during that time frame. So we were very proactive in reducing membership fees immediately. We felt that was critical for the customers, and so that they were grateful for that, and they were grateful that there was an option to do it online as well. Hope that answers it.
Yeah. Emma, how about you? I mean, in terms of people, in terms of obviously, you went through a lot of triage with which customers need to be supported, which patients need to be supported, which cannot be. You probably had a lot of tough decisions around that issue.
Right. So the hardest choice for us was to decide who to treat and also
Yeah.
to decide who could wait. And that was the toughest one. That with not having enough personal protective equipments and no clear guidelines, we couldn't treat anyone, just about anyone. The guidelines told us that see the emergency patients, but there was no clear guideline. I mean, emergency is something that I know who can wait and as a dentist and who need to be treated right away. But we just didn't know which equipments will work if we work on those patients to keep the virus out
Yeah.
of our system and to keep the patient safe. So those was the tough choices that we had to make. We saw people with pain and active infections. Those were the people that we started seeing, and to minimize the exposure, another tough choice I had to make was which team member to keep, and which could benefit for unemployment and so forth. So the choice of team members, we had the assistant who is in her late 50s, which is a high risk person, and somebody with asthma and so forth. So we had to identify those people, and we had to pick one person from the team who could help us dentists go to the office and do everything to minimize the exposure, because we didn't want to expose the entire team at that point, because we worked just so close to the patients. There was no social distancing there when we start working on patients. So those were the tough choices, but we started seeing patients once a week. We would open a day and see 2 or 3 patients that couldn't wait that week to minimize the exposure. So those were tough choices that we had to make.
Yeah. So I'm going to move on to another area which we've kind of already touched on a little bit, which is, this how technology supported the response. Obviously, you're all using, various agents, tools, chatbots, and so on. And it's interesting that I didn't hear a lot about leaving voicemails. It's all sort of text communication and chatbot and email. I don't know if you were also, using other forms of communication, but it seems like, you're both on board with communicating with customers more the way they're accustomed to be reached these days, which is, I think, very interesting. But can each of you talk a little bit about well, 2 things. One, what technologies, both operationally but primarily with customer communication, were most useful to you during this period, either for service delivery or communication, and then also maybe say for the end, what you wish you had or going into this, or what tools did you acquire during the process that you didn't have before this? So Matt, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I think the chatbot and texting were the 2 main sources of communication, with emails and then social media as the 3rd and 4th, I believe. And I don't think I answered your question properly before. So regarding like staffing and all that, we kept all our staff on board and made them we have iPhones at each location, so they were taking the additional iPhones home, calling people and texting people. So we divided up membership amongst each staff location. At Jupiter, we have 500 members. So of the 500 members, we divided them amongst the 9 people on staff, and they were required to keep in touch with them on a weekly basis, basically asking 3 questions. How are you doing? Are you attending the Zoom classes? What can we do for you? Did you get some of our equipment? That kind of stuff. So we tried to mimic that at each location.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. So okay, but the other part of the question is sort of, what are there any tools that you sort of realized you didn't have and needed and sort of had to acquire and onboard and learn during this process? I don't know.
In all honesty, no, we were pretty much positioned in place. Everybody uses not everybody uses a chatbot. We do at the Jupiter location, but we realize the strength of that now and what we need to do across the board. But we do texting at each location, and obviously we do a lot of social media and email. So we really were in a good position, I think, overall.
How was it to move to remote delivery, remote classes, and were there any hiccups or any learnings along the process of that sort of Zoom, or I don't know if you use Zoom or not, but that sort of virtual service delivery? Was that what were the challenges involved in that?
Yeah, it doesn't, the first couple days, it wasn't as smooth as we thought. There was a lot of interruption, and I don't know if it was because systems were overloaded. I'm not that savvy on technology and how it works.
I think everyone experienced that during that
Yeah,
like rush where suddenly everyone's on Zoom. I think there's a lot of along those lines. Yeah.
yeah, but once we got past 3 to 4 days and running consistent classes throughout the day, like I said, at 5 at each location, we learned readily how to manage it, how to get them motivated from afar. It's kind of boring when you're sitting on the other side going, "Good job, Charlie, 10 more reps." But at the end of the day, we figured out a way to make it motivational.
Okay, Hema, I know what's interesting in a healthcare. Obviously, you can't fix a tooth without being, within reach of a person. That's I don't think anyone's figured that out yet. But there are ways to use technology to help patients, right? So why don't you talk about that a little bit?
So the two tools that comes to my mind that we use most, one is the communication. For communication, having an interactive website with a chatbot was a big thing. It just helped engaging the patients who were going on a website to see our current status and updates and so forth. So that was a big thing, and the messages that we got through that were helpful. And the second thing that was helpful was partial telehealth. The video chats that we were doing to offer help, and this helped us kind of decide whether that patient needed to be seen right away, or they can be scheduled over to next day or next week and so forth. But unlike other healthcare providers, there is only so much we can do as a dentist with telehealth, other than just doing the visual exam and consultations. We can't do the treatment, but at least it helps us decide the nature of urgency and the type of treatment they may need. So that helps us decide when to schedule that person and how much time we need to allow and so forth. I'm just hoping that this tool, and I know you also asked that which tool you wish I had, or I wish I had, and I wish that I could utilize telehealth more like other healthcare providers. It used to be, it need to be evolved, I guess, and this crisis is fueling the need for more development in that area. Teledentistry is barely starting out. Telehealth is already becoming huge. But it could go to the point where I can appoint just one person or one dental assistant, go to the office and take x-ray or do the other, kind of do the proper retractions or photos where the dentist can see and evaluate the area much more effectively than just having to doing the video chat. So I think it will, this area will evolve going out of this crisis.
Sure.
I think the telehealth,
I would imagine the process of, here position the camera so you can see the tooth and get an actual good look. I'm sure that was a very, probably took a little practice to figure that one out. And I imagine there's a lot of technology yet to be developed to make that easier, I'm sure. But were you able to, go ahead, I'm sorry, someone wanted to jump in?
No, I was going to say, Charles, so this is Carrie. It's interesting, we have another client of ours who is also a dental practitioner, and they had told us a story about a month ago. They had, a customer had called them, and they weren't there to answer the phone, of course, but it got picked up through the chatbot service, and they got an automatic response. And of course, the dentist got a message, "Hey, you just missed a call from a customer." So that's the backstory, but they ended up calling the customer and finding out that their son had a really bad toothache. They knew it was an ongoing problem, and they were able to, within the span of 30 minutes of getting that initial missed call alert, calling the customer, speaking to them, understanding what it was that they were going to need, calling the local pharmacy just to prescribe some antibiotics and a painkiller, and they were done. So in the span of 30 minutes, they had actually created a new billable event, but solely through the use of using technology to do that for the most part. So for them, I think it was an aha moment of, wow, we could actually potentially treat more customers, more patients in a day for things like that.
Right,
Agreed.
and we're going to, yeah, we're going to get toward the end. We're going to kind of talk about what happens in the future and what things you've used now that you'll use in the future. So we'll get to that in a minute, but obviously we'll maybe expand on that point. So let's move on to the next thing, and I think we want to spend a little time here. It's this notion of, in the process of, adapting to the lockdowns, communicating with your customers, trying to deliver service to them through this in a obviously difficult environment, learning new tools and so on. There has to be some lessons in how to deliver customer experience, how to communicate with customers, how to keep customers happy, keep them, informed and all that. And I'm just kind of wondering if each of you have a couple of sort of lessons you've learned from this that you will, sort of use in your business going forward in terms of customer relationships. Matt, you want to start?
Yeah, so I'll start with from a franchisee situation, the franchisee role. They learned that the customers really trusted them by loaning out, essentially $40,000 worth of equipment to their customer base at each location, and that I think the customers felt an obligation since their membership was reduced. Social media, again, through not only the chatbot, but just the communication back and forth was extremely high in almost every single location's communication piece. So that was very strong. We realized we had a pretty good customer base. From the franchisor perspective, we realized that the good thing out of this is we had a common enemy, which was coronavirus, and it really we all rallied around the troops. I mean, I can't tell you how many times on Zoom meetings we had 17 different owners all on there chatting about the same thing. We came up with some great concepts during the time. We ran a couple huge trivia nights amongst all the locations together. We devised several meetings. A couple times a week, we would do one centralized yoga program to reach all the locations, done from a different owner each week. We also did meal prep discussions during each week, 2 times in the mornings on like Tuesdays and Thursday mornings. And then we had a huge positivity session where we just talked about what are their lives like, how are things going. That was usually once a week on a Thursday evening amongst, again, all the locations. So it turned out to be really beneficial in all ways.
And you think those things will carry on?
Yeah.
I mean, you're already opening up.
Yes.
So Hema, how about you? How about you in terms of customer relationship, customer experience, that sort of thing? What have you learned from this that that's gonna inform your business going forward?
So we figured that constant communication was the key, and is still the key for them to feel like they're not abandoned, especially the people whose treatment were not finished and it was on hold. Just to call them, get on a phone. We did get on phones with those people, and I think hearing your voice is another good thing that we are using a lot of digital communication, but every once in a while picking up the phone and talking to a person helps. But just keeping them engaged and constantly talking to them, they felt mentally that we are with them and we're going to help them. Chatbot did pick up a lot of messages that we weren't expecting. When we started out with agent services way before the crisis, but we're realizing the value more than ever now, and it did pick up a lot of messages, and it was really, really helpful tool to stay connected. What's interesting is American Dental Association's recent survey shows that about 15% of the dental offices may not come back after the crisis, and it's sad. And I think a lot of these offices were just not prepared, and unfortunately, some of these businesses will not survive through this crisis, and that's a sad story. But the communication was the key. I think that was the main thing on communication through all the channels that they felt comfortable.
Yeah, that's an interesting and you know, obviously sad point about, you know, which businesses will survive this. And I think, yeah, you hear about, we don't have a restaurant on this webinar, but you certainly hear about restaurants, and, you know, I've seen estimates of up to 40% of restaurants aren't going to make it out the other end of this. I don't know what the numbers are for gyms, but I think it's true that in every industry or every a small business sector, there's going to be survivors, and those who do and those who do not survive. You know, I'm interested in what your thoughts are, and you know, Hema, you've sort of described that, you know, having that good customer communication is probably a differentiator for those who make it through and those who do not. Matt,
Yes.
I don't know if you have any quick thoughts on what you think in your industry it will take to get through this. I know you've probably done a lot of the things that you think are needed to do to survive this and be a viable business on the other end of this, but I'm wondering if you have anything to add to that.
No, I would agree with Hema. I think it was just over communicate in every possible way, but similarly, we know that we've been told stats that 30% of our competitors are not going to make it. We do know of about 10% that have actively reached out to us and said, hey, are we looking to buy equipment? They're not going to make it. So you know, I know there is a real number. I do not know what that percentage is.
And these are, you know, guesstimates, I think, at this point. I mean, they may be higher or lower, but certainly I think it's fair to say it's going to be tough, you know?
Yeah.
So anyway, I want to move on to, I think, an interesting topic. It was each of you to talk a little bit about what the plan is to exit from this, because I think we've all learned one thing about this crisis is that there's not an on-off switch going in, and there's not an on-off switch going out. It tends to be more of a gradual type of thing. So I don't know, Matt, you're already in this process. Hema, you've got a little ways to go, I think, but you're probably thinking about it.
Yes.
So why don't you start and talk about what do you think is the sort of just the basic process of getting back to business, and, you know, and kind of give us a sense of how it's going to work, you know, once you actually are seeing not just emergency patients and so on, and,
Right.
and what kind of precautions, how can you communicate? Just kind of quickly run us through that.
Yes. So interestingly, we just had our first meeting, the team meeting yesterday. We now have secured enough personal protective equipments to be able to start the office, and we're planning for a June 1st start, which is what our county has given us the green light for. So we have secured enough PPEs. We did a dry run of how we're gonna work, because we have a lot of new infection control protocols that we will be following. We're running dental business or dental office while minimizing contact is gonna be a huge challenge. We're talking about prepaying or customer paying before or after the treatment, like the paperless transactions, curbside check-in. So in the waiting room, there's not gonna be people waiting. So they're gonna wait in a car where they're gonna check in, and we'll just bring them in, and so forth. The protective equipment that we will be wearing, we cannot touch and remove, and, you know, can't take too many breaks and all of that. Something that we're gonna have to get used to. Wearing N95 or N95 masks and another surgical mask over it is going to be a huge challenge, because it literally it's going to be a training, I guess, a learning curve for us, because it's really, really hard to breathe through that. And imagine doing long procedures with those masks on without touching and adjusting those masks. So a lot of the small things that we're going to have to iron out, and we will only know once we start using all those equipments. So we did the dry run yesterday. It's going to be, it will take entire month of June for us to kind of figure out. It's going to be a slow start. We're going to start with 1 or 2 days, and we're going to start bringing those patients back who are in second phase of urgency in the month of June, and hopefully starting July, we will be back to normal. That's what we're shooting for.
Yeah, and quickly on that, in terms of customer communication, are you getting a sense, how are you making customers comfortable that this is going to be a safe environment? What kind of How
all
are you
of it,
communicating what you just described here to them?
yes, so all of it, we sent a comprehensive email to the customers that listing everything that we have been doing to, so that they feel secure, because we want to make sure that patients feel safe to come back to us, because most people think that, hey, dentists are too close and I don't want to go. And so a lot of people will choose to wait out another month or two, which, you know, we agreed it will happen, but we're doing everything. So we sent out a big email, and we are communicating to, if people are responding to us by chat, the chat or the text messages, we are letting them know. So we're using any channel that they're feeling comfortable with, but we've customized the chat bot with some of those responses, and also the phone messages. We're calling them. We're starting to make phone calls now. So to let them know all of the measures that we have taken, so that we can be safe.
Great, great. So Matt, you probably have not quite the same challenge Hema does. You're not sticking your hands in anyone's mouths, but the gym is a close quarters kind of environment. So how are you managing through that sort of social distancing as you reopen a gym? Kind of walk us through your reopen plan and then how you communicate it.
Yeah, so the very first thing we did was we set up a survey. So just visualize in your mind a basketball court. That's about the size of each location. It's about 5,000 square feet of workout space. And so we sent out a survey to every client. We had about 62% of all the customers reply back. Of that number, 97% said they would be coming back, but we knew realistically, our gut instinct was it's going to be about 50%, and we've been spot on. At each location that's opened, it's about 50% of the people are coming back immediately. The other people are saying they're going to wait a couple weeks. They're still a little apprehensive, and we completely understand it. But we had 3 full weeks to work on a pre-opening plan. So we put together a template on how to reshoot a video. We segmented the floor workout space to have anywhere from 20 to 25 people in 8x10 boxes. We taped it all off, sent it out from our Jupiter location and said, hey, shoot it, do exactly what we did here, mimic it, create a video for your own customers. We're going to get it all out. And then one by one, we individually, released it to all the locations through their, rather than do it as a mass email, we did it individually per location to their customer base, and showed them how we were going to keep the place clean, all the measures we took in place that met the state of Florida CDC requirements and the national CDC requirements. And then we put together a 5-page procedural manual, got posters printed, said, hang these in your club, all the things, just basically kind of making, I guess, the perception of the customer feeling better. Because as you obviously well know, there's no way we can stop the virus. I mean, if it's going to spread, it's going to spread, but we're taking all the accurate measures to keep everything clean. And then we told them, get your equipment back, make sure you order your inventory from Cintas, our supplier, and just have everything in place, and then run a 3-day test run on it. So last week, when we knew we were about to open, we actually violated the governor's edict and had people come in because we had to test it out to make sure we would be running smoothly, and everything went to plan.
That's great. I mean, we won't tell. So
yeah, thank you.
So yeah, so that's really interesting. So actually, what I want to move on to is kind of our final topic, which is, what all these, again, as mentioned earlier, there's all these things that we're all doing to get through this, and we talked about a little bit about some customer practices that we extend, but just sort of operationally, both in terms of how you run your team to how you interact with customers to how the service is delivered, which things that, again, have been adopted here, and obviously which technologies you've used to get through this, which of them kind of are going to be here well past the crisis? And Hema, maybe you could share a couple thoughts.
Sure. I think minimal contacts is going to be a big thing in dentistry, I think, to spread not just this virus, but just to avoid spreading the diseases or any other virus or
Sort of in
anything
the
else,
same vein that
anything
people
airborne.
aren't going to shake hands anymore, right? It's like
Exactly.
handshaking is
For a
kind of done
while.
forever, I think. And
Yeah.
similarly, I think there's going to be a different standard of
Similarly,
contact.
so
Yeah.
minimal contacts, paperless transactions are going to be something that I see that we're going to keep. Web-based communications, the text messaging that we have been doing, it's bigger part of our communication than ever, and I think we're going to be using that moving forward. Telehealth, I'm thinking that that's going to evolve, and I can totally see ourselves doing more and more of that. Just the different ways of communicating and keeping in touch, we're going to be utilizing all of that. We're actually taking something positive out of this. We're looking to expand out of this because we're looking at the markets, the local markets and surrounding areas, and we're thinking of if we can help the struggling practices or the dental practices or the owners who are struggling with mergers, we're probably going to we're rolling out a plan to help them out, and if they wish to merge, so that way they can stay in business. And that's going to be a win-win situation. I think that's something positive coming out of this, which is a way to expand and also at the same time help the other practices who think that they may not survive alone. Yeah.
Okay. How about you, Matt?
Well, I try to look at things from I guess this is such a unique situation. We tried to look back historically and see what was different in those timeframes, and did anybody expect a new normal back then? And I think the reality is we're just going back to normal. My instinct is that from the Spanish flu in the 1918, and then here in America we had the Hong Kong flu in 1968, and I'm old enough to remember that, and 100,000 people died then, and we never even made a big stink about it. I just think I think another 6 months down the road, when it starts to rear its ugly head again around wintertime, we're gonna say, hey, this is a nasty disease. But I don't think it's really going to change. I think it's only going to enhance. People were begging to come back when we opened the first day, and I think our business in particular is a communal business. There's no doubt about it. But what it did do was it opened up the doorway for us to see there is a way to do this virtually, to increase awareness of what we do, and to potentially have new customers. So I think that's a good thing. But you could not stop people from bumping elbows, fist bumping, and really violating the social distancing. And I have to be honest with you, I just don't think that's something that it's not innate to human nature as much as we try to do it, but I just don't see that being a long-term thing.
Yeah, those are fair points. So you think BAU for the most part, but maybe some of the online service delivery will help you expand your available market in some way. Is that fair?
100%. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That's fair. Okay. We think we have a little time for questions. I've got a few here. And Matt, actually, that one's for you. Since you operate in so many different states, was there, in terms of both your plan sort of going into the lockdown and your plan coming out, or were there any meaningful differences among the states?
Yeah, there actually were. California was the first one to go by 2 days ahead of Florida. Georgia shut down a couple days after us, and then North Carolina about a day after them. So we were really concerned that all this would be kind of wonky and all over the place, and we wouldn't know how to control it. But thank God for Google, we were able to keep on top of stuff in each state through each one of the governor's edicts, and kind of kept on top of it as best as we could. But and ironically, we're all kind of opening up at the same time. California was able to open up on Monday. We in Florida were able to open up on Monday, and except for Broward County. So we have 4 that are not opened as of yet, but they're all planning to open this coming Monday.
So, and sort of on top of that, were there any significant differences among the states in terms of the customer response? Were they more cautious in one state versus another? Did you notice any difference?
No, not at all.
Okay, interesting. Emma, for you, if someone's curious, as an independent practitioner, you're not part of any big group, is that correct?
Yes, I'm independent.
Would it have to be, but did that make it harder being independent, or would you, any thoughts on that?
So it was harder because you're the only one in your area, and there's, everyone struggling in their own little practices, but you don't know what's right and what's wrong, and if whatever you're doing is gonna be correct thing to do. The associations, the American Dental Association and California Dental Associations helped a lot, providing us with guidelines and protocols, and they were on top of their communication from their side, and to help the small businesses like mine. And I attended countless webinars on these things. That's all I did to stay updated with whatever I had to do to prepare myself and to prepare my team to reopen. And I remember first 4 weeks, all I would do is I would have, my schedule was filled with webinars after webinars on this COVID and how it's affecting us. So yeah.
One thing, there was no shortage of content out there to help people.
So, yeah, but it was hard to decide which are
Sure.
the credible content and what to use and which channels to go. So yeah.
Right, fair point. All right, I think we'll end it there because we're a little over 45 minutes, and Carrie, you wanted to make any final remarks?
Yeah, I thank you so much, Matt and Hema and Charles, for the great discussion. I think it's refreshing to hear from some businesses who are clearly, they're going to make it. So kudos to you guys for the planning, the preparation you did. And I think what I took away from the both of you is that it was your proactive nature about dealing with this and being in front of the customers, heavy usage of communication right out of the get-go. And then of course, using technology to make sure that you were able to support your business through this time. And for your staffs as well. So really, really happy that you both are getting back on board. Matt, of course, you're starting a little bit sooner than Hema, but Hema, your practice will be back online soon. So we're going to be very excited to follow you both and see how your businesses are doing. Love the idea that you're looking to assist other dental practices in your area. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for growth for you from that perspective. Yes. I think that's a really, really wise move. So thank you again. And then for anyone else who's listening, if you want to learn a little bit more about agents, certainly visit our website at agents.ai. And we work directly with SMBs. We work with franchise networks, as well as partners and resellers. And so check us out. If you have any questions about it, please do let me know. And for those who are interested in a free trial, we do offer that as well. So on our homepage, you can access a free trial of our chatbot if you're interested. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Likewise.
Well, thanks, Charles, Carrie, Matt, and Hema. These were great questions and discussion. And I just want to thank Agents too and Carrie for putting this webinar together for us. I think it was all very educational for us. So just a few more items from Locology before we end today's webinar. You will be able to view today's broadcast along with previous webinars on our website, locology.com. Just navigate to Research and Resources, and under that, you'll click on Webinars. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please be sure to visit locology.com and subscribe for updates to be the first to know about future webinars. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, everyone,
Thank you.